Welcome back to Be the Good with Kate, the show that inspires each of us to see how we have the power to make a difference all around us. Each episode highlights an individual doing good in the world while following their passions, good for their own souls and for others. I get so excited about sharing each and every episode of Be the Good with you, and I hope you enjoy these people and stories. If you're new here, welcome, and if you are returning, thank you so much for your support. I'm so glad you found Be the Good with Kate and would love to hear from you. If you're finding value in these episodes, I invite you to share with someone who could also use this dose of good news, or tag me on social with your favorite quote from the episode. Every share, subscriber, review, and comment helps me to share these guests' wonderful work to more people. Thank you for your help in this. Now, on to this week's episode. Let's spread a little more goodness in the world.
Today's guest on Be the Good with Kate is Kristi Porter. She is joining me from Atlanta, Georgia. And from her website, she helps cause-focused organizations understand and execute effective marketing campaigns so they can move from stressed to strategic. Your resources may be limited, but your potential isn't. And I love what she says here. It's simple but profound. I will show you how to have a bigger social impact. And isn't that what all nonprofits are trying to do? So Kristi, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. I am delighted. And always, I have, one of the great things about starting your own company is that you get to give yourself your own title. And so I am a chief do-gooder. So I am always delighted to meet other do-gooders and chat about the industries and impact and everything as well. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, well, right back at you. And I love that chief do-gooder. That's fantastic. And what I really love about having you as a guest too is we have a lot of guests who are very much in, I guess we could even say more of like the micro, like a specific nonprofit, a specific cause, and you're kind of the macro over it. So it's a neat that we're going to get to hear your perspective on seeing the nonprofit space from kind of that more umbrella vibe, so to speak.
Sure.
But first, please tell me a little bit more about who you are and what you do in your own words.
Yeah, for sure. So Signify has been around since July 2016. It really came about, I have kind of one of those jack of all trades, different industries, always kind of got the next job by relationship type thing. So I've spanned multiple industries. And so I, shortly after college, I try not to date myself too much in this, but I worked in hospitality PR and in high-end restaurants here in Atlanta. Atlanta's a great food town if anybody gets the chance to visit. But yeah, it was really interesting and really dynamic, and it was a burgeoning scene. And I like to say it was like when chefs started becoming rock stars and we started having all the Food Network shows and the competitions. And so it was kind of a really exciting, fun time. And of course, all my friends loved to go to restaurant openings with me. But at the end of the day, it was like just not fulfilling. And so at that time, I sort of broke into freelance writing again, accidentally, because somebody was writing a profile on one of our people, but the reporter who was supposed to write it had a death in the family, and the magazine wanted to continue with the story. And so I ended up writing it. And then I was like, oh, people pay for this. Okay. And so that's how I sort of fell into that. And they were like, would you like to keep doing this? And so I've always been a writer. And so it was kind of at that, but then I was like, oh, what can I do that's more fulfilling? And so I went out on my own as a freelancer for a couple of years, still a lot of just nonprofit and restaurant and hospitality and lifestyle focus. Did that for a couple of years, and then was recruited to be by a friend to be the director of communications at an environmental nonprofit here in Atlanta. So that was right as like green was really starting to take off, and sustainability was just sort of like, what does this look like in our everyday lives, and how do we make this more approachable, and everything like that. And then still just volunteering and being around just the impact and nonprofits at that time. And then I was recruited to be the director of event marketing at a faith-based nonprofit. And that was around the same time I also discovered through just one of my volunteer projects, the issue of not only human trafficking, which is still the issue I like to work on most, but also just social enterprise as a business model. And it was just this beautiful intersection of commerce and cause, and the fact that, nonprofits are amazing. I love working with them. I've, worked at them. But the fact that you can also make money and do good at the same time and not have to ask for donations was a really innovative thing. And so that was kind of like, I saw that as immediately the future. of what business would be. And so, I was in the restaurant industry as chefs started kind of rising to fame type thing. I was in the green movement as that started taking off. And then I saw social impact and social enterprise and thought, this is the next stage of business. How do I get to do more of this? And so that's sort of what eventually led to the creating of my company, because I had looked around and was like anybody, I started applying to just all kinds of jobs to see what was out there. And but I had all these friends who were doing amazing things in very small stages, either here in Atlanta or another city, whether it was a nonprofit or a for-profit. And, there are a lot of cause marketing agencies that are larger and that look for really big companies and nonprofits to work with, household names that we all know. But it seemed like there were very few people serving the micro industries and those, little bitty organizations that were volunteer-led or one or two people or something like that. And I was like, oh, I love small businesses. What if more people could know about this group of people? How do you start small and become a global name? How do you have to have somebody on your staff dedicated to marketing? Again, I think just because you're small doesn't mean you have to have a small impact. You can still have a big impact. And so it really just sort of all led to, this is where I want to spend my time, and this is who I want to support. And this is sort of the bridge I can be in the industry between helping people develop quality marketing and still not even having to have someone in-house to be able to do that for them, but to really help them pivot to be able to expand their audience and impact.
That's fantastic. Now, I'm curious, if there was someone who just had zero background in nonprofit, they have no idea what this world is like other than that you give to charities in your life, like that kind of 101, how would you explain this idea of social entrepreneurship, social, just all of that you're kind of in the ground floor of, so to speak?
Yeah, well, social enterprise, to me, the easiest way to explain it is, for example, Tom's shoes, which so many people know about now, or my Warby Parker glasses, they're somewhere in my house I can't find, all of those types of things. So, a lot of them, and the one that originally, I feel like Tom's and Warby Parker and things like that we originally saw was, one for one model. Certainly there are lots of other evolutions since then, but that's a case of, it's not only I'm just selling a product, but I'm selling a product in order to better somebody's life. There's an impact model built right into it, rather than this is something we do after the fact. We'll later grow and set up a foundation, or we'll have a sustainability team, or we'll have something like that. But really the foundation of the business being built on impact and using business as a force for good. And I feel like that's sort of what the root of all of that is. Clearly I'm, a marketing organization. I'm not a product seller that, has something to sell tangibly to give a one-on-one or something like that. But the whole reason I started my business was to be able to use it as a force for good and to be able to support social impact companies and nonprofits. And that's really where I wanted to spend my time. And those are the kinds of people I wanted to see succeed. So that's sort of how I encapsulate it.
Oh, that's great. Now, I have my major in college, not that I've used it too much directly over the years, but indirectly was arts administration, which was essentially nonprofit management with an arts focus. Okay. But I always remember, it was very much like nonprofits equal little money, equal a lot of turnover, hectic hours, especially in development and marketing. Those were the two that always saw the big turnovers. And limited budget. You're always worried about spending too much money. So now, I wish that more of what you do existed then, because I just know I never heard of such a thing at that time, right? It was always like, what can the nonprofit do with their own people? Like grassroots.
How do we beg for this? Yeah.
How do we beg for this? Exactly. So now, what have you found to be the best tools for that increase in, I don't know if we want to say increase in awareness of the nonprofits you work with, or increase in the donations, or do you know what I'm asking?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things from the strictly marketing side. One of the areas I spend a lot of time on is helping people develop their brand message, because every organization, including you and me, we started with the support of friends and family, right? Those people, including the people where, out in your audience, everybody starts with the support of friends and family. Those people will give you all the time in the world to talk about your wildest hopes and dreams, hours. Well, as you continue to grow and pivot out from that, that, you get less time to be able to get your message across, or you're using such insider language because that person hasn't spent 3 hours with you, but you only have 3 minutes to talk about. So how are you communicating what you do in a way that's going to not only get your message across, but make that person's eyes light up? And so, and want to really get involved. So that's kind of where I help on the marketing side a lot, is really just helping people tell their story for a wider audience rather than the people that started on the journey with them who already know or are invested in the cause. The other thing I think, just externally outside of what I do and what I feel like is the most successful, is when people find ways to work together. And build those relationships. So it can be anything from, I know every small organization out there is like, how do we get a Delta or a Home Depot or something like that to invest in us? But you'll have the most impact when you can partner with other small businesses who are really willing to see the time and effort and where their energy and focus is going. And employee engagement, from the discussions I've had, from the conversations I've been a part of, from the conferences I've attended, employee engagement, especially during the pandemic when everybody was just so remote and out of touch. I feel like that's such a huge win that nonprofits have at their disposal that they're really not taking full advantage of. And the number one complaint from companies is that the nonprofits aren't either telling them how they're making that impact, or they're not making it relevant to them. And so I feel like both people show up at the table with, and it's a fault on both sides, really. The nonprofit shows up saying, this is what we need, if but we'll take what you have to give. And then the company shows up and is like, here's what we have to give, and doesn't maybe even ask what's needed. And so if we can start with the relationship and really talk through it and bring a conversation to the table, then you'll be able to get those community partners involved, which is better for any cause. And then, even from a nonprofit standpoint, unfortunately, we don't see a lot of collaboration either. So thinking, okay, if most organizations don't provide wraparound services, holistic services. So if you're really good at this one piece of what you do, maybe it's finding shelter for homeless individuals, but the other person is focused, another organization is focused on food or medical support. Why can't you come together and do something for a greater good, rather than just hoarding your own resources or worrying if the other person is taking your share of the resources? So I feel like there's kind of multiple levels of ways that we can still make a lot of impact and really work together for a greater good.
So interesting. And so many things that, I'm saying we, as like the general public who's not in the weeds with nonprofits, don't think about on the regular, even though we know nonprofits exist all around us.
Right.
So going with that, what are some good news moments of nonprofits you've worked with or individuals you've worked with that you'd like to share? Stories of success.
Yeah. So I think even back to a little bit of the brand message thing, one of my clients a couple of years ago, and I'd been a longtime supporter of them. And in fact, when I started my company, they were my first clients because I had this existing relationship with them. And they were in a very similar position where they had grown and had a really great thing going here in Atlanta, but their gala, which was what we were working on at the time, it had been lots of friends and family. And so we were setting up this event and nobody had asked the question that I had asked, which was, they were talking about what's the program and who needs to say this, and, all of the general logistics we all 100% expect and need to know when it comes to a large annual event like this. But I just stopped and said, okay, wait, who's in the room? Who are we talking to? How should we phrase this? How should we, do they already understand the impact? Do they even know who you are? Or did they buy a corporate table and people are just showing up and they're like, sounds like a good night out, I'll go. And so that really just changed their perspective a lot. And they ended up raising like 4 times the amount of money that they had in previous years, because they were like, we're talking to a brand new audience. We really have to cast vision for these people rather than getting into the weeds of what we've been doing, because they have no reference for that. Another one that I have loved to see grow is my friend Latasha Morrison, who started an organization called Be the Bridge. And it's really about racial reconciliation within the church and furthering those efforts. And so, she was pushing forward the conversation. She was there having that conversation before a lot of other people were. And so it was so fun to see those first iterations of her project and, provide feedback. And we were helping launch not only the organization, organization, but like a discussion group, and she was getting great feedback. And now she's been in like Ebony magazine. She was like a Facebook fellow. She was just all of this stuff because she was poised and had already a great message and was at the forefront of this when the rest of the world was ready to catch up to this conversation. She was in a really great place for it, and then there's even people like, on a small scale, my friend here in downtown Atlanta, Cottrell, she has a tea shop, beautiful little tea shop. If you get to Atlanta, go to Dr. Bombay's Underwater Tea Party, because it's an amazing little tea shop. But the proceeds,
what a great name.
I know, right? And so the proceeds from the tea shop put girls in college, through college in India. And so I was able to travel with her a couple of years ago to meet the girls and to see like the impact that it has made in their life. And, a lot of these girls, this is a very small scale. She has like a dozen people in this house. They get to choose what college they want to go to. They get to choose their major. They get so excited to just wear uniforms, because it's a sign of respect there. And so to see these girls who some of them had been really cast out from their own family because they were girls, or their family had been put in really difficult situations, or they were just of a lower caste, like to see them just walk down the street with such dignity and people to know who they are and who they're associated with. And so even just that, there's no $1 million knocking at her door right now, and hopefully there will be at some point, but just to see kind of those wins on a very small scale, and to be able to meet the people that I see pictures of on the tea shop wall and things like that, and really be able to help her like tell that story of how this is getting out, what the effort has been, what's going on. And so yeah, there have been lots of just really fun stories along the way of big wins, small wins, highlights of the year to highlights of the week, all of that kind of thing. But it's just one of the most rewarding things I do. And I actually had this conversation this morning with somebody over coffee, is just hearing all the really innovative ways that people are solving big problems. I feel like every week I'm like, wow, I never would have thought of doing that. That is just a completely novel way to, tackle this problem. And so, human ingenuity, there's just never a shortage of it. And it's really exciting to see. And so that's what I love so much about not only the people I work with, but just, networking in circles like you and I, and probably a lot of your audience is in, and just hearing like, that's what keeps you going and inspired, is just like, yeah, I'm not going to do it that way. I don't even know what that is outside of what I can Google, but go for it. Let's make it happen. And how can I support you along the way? And how can you support me? And how can we just all make this better?
I love how you just tied into this whole idea of people, right? And listening to people and the ideas. That's how we grow, right? We're not a one-man shop. We always have to be networking, be out there, be open to new ideas. And that's how any nonprofit has gotten anywhere to begin with. So it's really exciting to hear all that you've been involved in. And for people listening on the podcast rather than watching on YouTube, your face lights up when you are giving these stories. It's so clear that you have found such a passion in doing this.
Yes. Well, and, for me, the easiest way for the first 18 months, I just worked with friends. So there's no better way to start your business than for you to support your friends, and for your friends to trust you and support in you, and, start working with all of them. So that was a great way to start. And then, I found over and over again, good people know good people. So that's a great way to build from there. So that's what's made it so interesting. And, the former client that I had coffee with this morning, that, he came to me through this other organization that I mentioned. And so we've been able to keep in touch, and he was telling me about all the stuff that he's been doing. And we're like, oh, you should, I was like, oh, you should read this. And he's like, you should know this person. And so to just be able to have those conversations, it's so fun. And it leaves you feeling better whenever you can shut the news off and have more conversations like that.
Yes, hearing about people doing good. I mean, that's the reason I started this whole podcast to begin with.
Yes.
To hear about people doing good, because there are so many people, and you get to be, in the thick of it, helping these organizations every day.
Yeah.
What are some mantras or quotes that you find yourself going back to in your work?
Yeah. It sounds so, it's been so overused, but probably, 20 years on my Yahoo account, which I still use for my personal email. I've always had Gandhi's quote about being the change you want to see in the world, because it was just, and I still refer to that over and over again, simply because I feel like that's the essence of what I do. And I don't want to be somebody that just sits back and complains about why things aren't better. I want to be able to be the person that's taking action. So even like whenever, I typically do a word for the year. And so even when I'm thinking about my word or theme for the year, I always make it a verb or very action oriented or something like that, because I want to see a change. I want to see a change in myself. I want to see a change internally and externally. And I want to be part of making it better and not just sitting back and complaining about it. So, like I said, we can throw a rock and see that quote somewhere, but for me, it has always just hit home very much as well.
Well, there's a reason that we see it everywhere, right? That's why, because it is so good. It's so profound, even in its simple, just few words. Yeah. Can I ask what your 2022 word of the year is?
It's really been about, which is funny, and thank goodness for blurry screens for those of you who are watching, because my apartment is a disaster area in the back. It's really been about change. This year the last couple of years have been hard for everyone. And so I just needed to be, grow is kind of the word I've been using, but it really is not just grow, but also change. And so right now which is why my apartment is a disaster. I'm in the middle of a move. And it was just very personal to me that I kind of made this move, not just because I wanted to change your scenery, which I did, but I was reading this amazing short book by Jeff Henderson called What to Do Next. Highly recommend it. And it was really talking about career moves. But for me, it also was talking in my, how I was reading, it was also just a physical move. I feel like I go through more change and more growth when I change locations, be it down the road or much further. And so that was sort of the kind of the big turning point for me in just the last couple of months, because I was like, I don't want to be the person who chooses complacency. It's the easiest way to go. It's comfortable. I drive around my neighborhood and I'm like, I like this neighborhood, and I really do. And that's fine. But I'm like, I don't want to regret the steps I didn't take. I don't want to not be the person who doesn't grow and who doesn't change and who doesn't really push to make themselves better and to put themselves into new situations to see what can happen and what else is out there in this big, amazing world. And so that was sort of kind of the theme for this year, but I feel like that's kind of where it ended up. Can never predict in January where it's going to end up at the end of the year, but being able to look at everything through that lens and going, okay, where am I headed? And then now trying to think of, wow, okay, this isn't where I thought I would be in September or anything like that, but here I am. And it was all basically, this is how it showed up for me right now.
Well, great food for thought for everybody listening too. Just that idea of, are we being complacent, and where is that growth? And I love the phrase growth mindset. I felt for years, I just kind of heard it and never thought much about it. And in the past year, I've been really like, no, what does that actually mean? And there's so much to it in big and small ways. So it's just a great thing to really think about, and how we are applying those ideas to our lives, even if it's a move or physical or mental, or
just
like you said, the collaboration, mindset shift. Yes. I wanted to ask, I'm curious, what have been some of the biggest challenges with helping nonprofits find that bigger audience? And I ask because I know that there's so much, I don't know if you use the word noise with it, but there's so many nonprofits, and we're in this world of like Instagram every 10 seconds and 24-hour news. And what's been the biggest challenge with getting them out there?
Yeah, I think it comes, and even just talking about the growth mindset, I feel like a lot of it's internal. It's not external. So, nonprofits, so many of them have just sort of that scarcity mindset. So it's hard to grow with that mindset. And so sometimes, I've had people hire me that have large budgets, and people, with small budgets are thinking, well, of course they did, because they have a large budget. Well, I've also had people that have, they're only volunteer led, no paid staff, but they recognized the value of that. And they knew they needed this kind of help to be able to grow past what they were doing now. So again, it comes back to sort of that mindset shift in not just thinking, what is the price tag attached to that? And I'm not just saying that because I sell services. You can apply this to anything, but really looking at it from an ROI standpoint. You know, if you pay me X amount of money and you make double that of money, but you were hoping for triple amount of money, well, you still made double amount of money. So it's still worth the, you know, the impact on your investment. And so I think that is a large portion of it is nonprofits generally. One of my friends, she has a nonprofit. She wanted to take a marketing course for herself and her board wouldn't even approve it. They didn't understand why she needed it. She needed to work on fundraising more instead of marketing. And so they really pushed back. So she ended up just having to pay for it out of her pocket. And that just sort of broke my heart a little bit that she didn't have even that support from her board and they didn't understand well enough why she needed this kind of training to help grow beyond what they were doing now. So I feel like there's a little bit of that scarcity mindset that keeps you stuck in just saying, do I have X amount of dollars right now? If I don't, let's say no. And there's certainly, I want everybody to be a good steward of your budget. I'm not here to tell you how to use it, but also think long-term versus short-term. What is the payoff in the long run to be able to do that? And then the other challenge, just as I talked about, is with any of us, nonprofits included, we're all so close to what we do that we just can't see the forest for the trees, right? I hire consultants because I can't see outside of myself. Even whenever I utilized interns, the first thing they have to do when they show up is read through all my marketing materials and tell me what they don't understand and what doesn't make sense, because it all makes sense to me. So I need them to give that kind of input because I don't understand it. And if they don't understand it and they're new to marketing, then my clients aren't going to understand it either. And so looking at it from that perspective, but that's also the nonprofit thing. And kind of what I was talking about earlier was just sort of understanding your brand message, not only from how you describe it, like we all look at what we do and then, you know, we talk to other people and they're like, and you're like, why aren't they excited? This is amazing stuff. And so helping them really be able to tell that story to that larger audience who doesn't know where they're coming from. I'm in marketing. There's a lot of jargon. I can't talk to clients and throw out all these marketing terms and expect them to keep up with the conversation. And so it's the same way when we talk to donors, funders, sponsors, partners, anything else. You can't talk to them like they've been doing this journey with you the whole time. You have to talk to them on their level and you have to know which points to emphasize that, like I said, will make their eyes light up and make them say, like, not just that's so interesting, but how do I get involved? What do? I need to be a part of this story. And one time I sat down with an anti-trafficking organization who I'd admired for a long time. And I literally sat across the table with them over coffee. And I said, okay, 3 miles from here, there's another organization that's similar to you. Why should somebody give money to you rather than them? And they had no answer. And that's a big problem. And so helping them understand what makes them different, what their secret sauce is, why somebody should invest their money into their specific organization outside of, you know, one of the things I like to say is like, it's no longer just about your mission. It's about your message. There's so many amazing missions to choose from. And it's hard as, you know, a donor to figure out where to put my funds because there's so many things I want to support. But again, cutting through that noise that you're talking about, that's part of your message. You can't just rely on the fact that you're doing something good. When we first started seeing, you know, kind of what I think of as sort of the 1.0 of social enterprises, if you walk back with me about 20 years, is there were all the paper beads. People were always selling the paper beads. These were made in so-and-so by this woman in this village. And we were all like, oh, what a great cause. I'll take 3 sets. And, you know, we had all paper beads and things like that. Well, then everybody else started showing up with, we do this and it's great. We do this and it's great. And now it's about quality. If you have a great mission, but your product isn't a great quality, there's somebody else who's willing to offer up the quality and the great mission. And I feel like it's the same way when it comes to your message. It's no longer just about having a good mission. You have to have a powerful message that goes with it.
So many great points. And I feel like it's filled with great advice, whether you're working in nonprofit, whether you want to donate to nonprofits, or just in life. There's so many parallels throughout all of this. And Kristi, a question I've been asking recently on all the episodes is, if someone came to you and they said, I want to make a difference, but I don't know where to start. I don't know how. I just know I want to make the world a better place. Is there any advice you'd give them?
Yeah, I typically I just talk to people about what they're most excited about in the moment. So it could be somebody they're following on social media that's doing something great. Even, I'll give you the example. One of the other things I do is teach for-profits how to give back with their business, even on a really small scale as well. And so again, we're strapped for time. Nobody in the world is going to be like, oh, I have plenty of time and plenty of money. What do you need? And so we are all dealing with a scarcity of something. And so people are like, I want to make a difference with my business, but I don't know what to do, or I don't have time, or what should I wait till my business gets bigger? And I'm always like, I can tell you in 5 minutes with $0 what to do. And it sounds like too good to be true, but the most important thing you can do then, if you don't have time or don't have resources, is just use your influence. So if I can't give to this gala that somebody else is throwing, but I think it's a really great cause, maybe I know somebody who can, or maybe we can split the cost and go in together. But utilizing your influence for the things that you love the most, and being able to make the introductions, I think even just those are really powerful ways of making a difference. Clearly, we've seen social media as it has its drawbacks for sure, but it also is a great way to, spread the message of things that you really care about. So if it's just liking and resharing something, then start there. If that's what you have, start just learning about something. The more you can really dig into something that you care about, go to an event, go to a free workshop, go to do a 5K. I have friends that they're just runners. And so she spends a lot of her time just running charity 5Ks because she's going to be out running anyway. So that's an easy way for her to already do something she loves and turn it into something that's, better for it. There are web browsers that you can use that when you search, they'll donate like clean water and different kinds of things. There are a few different ones, but we're all Googling. So why not use a site like that? So there's just 100,000 ways, but the idea is to figure out what you have available, what you're passionate about, and how you can get started as quickly as possible so that you'll get that immediate gratification and keep going.
Wonderful. Kristi, I can't thank you enough for all of this information, all these insights. And where can people find you, follow you, find out what you have going on?
Yes. So I am at signify.solutions. It's a little bit different of a URL, but it's signify.solutions, and you'll find me in over 100 free blog posts to read there. I have a little shop with some projects or products, and freebies you can download and all of that kind of stuff. But that's really kind of even one way I give back, is giving out this free content that people can use for whatever stage they're at right now. So yeah, you can go find me there. And then sometimes I show up on social media and sometimes I don't. So I will always be online.
And that is okay, because you're helping all those nonprofits get their voice out there for sure.
Yes. A lot of people want to talk about social media. And if I wasn't in marketing, I wouldn't even hardly be on social media. And so I'm like, just know that you don't have to do all the things. Focus on what you can do and what you can do best, and build on it from there. But if that stresses you out, then let's figure out a different route for you to go. Yeah.
Like you said, from stressed to strategic, which I'm going to be thinking about that quote for a long time to come. Kristi, thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for giving us this kind of like a zoomed out version and then zooming it all in for us. I really got a lot out of it. So I know the audience will as well.
Thank you too. Thanks for spreading the good.
Hey again, it's Kate here. So I asked you guys for my birthday to nominate people in your lives who are good deeds doers. So now for the upcoming month, I'm going to talk about one or two of them each episode. This week, let's talk about Cheryl Miller. She was nominated by Jason Bahamundi, who was a guest a few weeks ago on Be the Good with Kate. His podcast is highlighting Cheryl right now, so you can definitely check that out online if you look at Run Try Mag. Cheryl's story is incredible. She grew up under the poverty line with a mother who struggled with alcohol and drug addiction following her father's suicide. She had quite the childhood and very just not stable, and she loved the idea of sports, but sports cost money and time, and she felt like she needed to help her family instead. Skip way ahead to today. Cheryl is Gypsy Journey On Instagram, GYPSEE Journey. She is now a USATF Level 2 coach, Lululemon ambassador, Hoka flyer, alter ego running team, and does so much. Check her out. She's doing amazing things. Check out her interview with Jason Bahamundi. Run Try Mag. If you look that up, you will find that there. Cheryl Miller, thank you for what you do. Thanks so much for listening to Be the Good with Kate Chericello. Whether you're listening on YouTube or via podcast, it would mean the world if you liked, subscribed, and or left a review. You heard about the good? Now go out and be the good in your life this week. If you have stories of good news that need to be shared, please send me a message. Thanks again and have a great week.